Is your practice tired of wrestling with insurance denials, deciphering EOBs, and watching your revenue slip through the cracks? You are not alone. Welcome to The Claim Game, the podcast designed to cut through the confusion and provide you with the best practices for revenue cycle management success. We are Jeremy and Catherine Zug, and we've been with people just like you in the trenches. Each week, we'll break down complex billing processes, share real-world solutions from practices like yours, and ask questions of the game makers and changers of healthcare so you can take control of your revenue. Let's turn those claim denials into deposits and help you return to focusing on patient care. It's time to win the claim game.
Thanks for agreeing to do this. I really appreciate it. Maybe talk a little bit about you and how you got into private practice.
Yeah, I am about to hit my 10-year anniversary as a practice owner in November. And so I need to probably it is a big deal. I feel super proud and I need to do a little bit of planning on like the celebration of it because I feel like it's just gonna come and go super quickly. But 10 years ago, before I started the practice, I spent a few years in community mental health. I loved everything about that job except for that it made me super burnt out. And I actually quit that job without having another one. And so it became like a big rest period for me. And I was super fixated on like details like paying off my student loans and stuff like that. But interestingly enough, I feel like I had a pretty formative experience, which was if I rest, it's going to allow me to be creative again. And so it was kind of out of a hyper burnout season, not really knowing what I wanted next, that I feel like rest really cultivated an ability to just be like, who am I? What do I want? What do I hope to build? And it was kind of like a really percolate's not the right word, like a cultivation period, I think, whether I knew it was happening or not. That then I was like, oh, I want to have a group practice. I want to pool these things that I really enjoyed from community mental health or what we know about people, or even I was a play therapist for a couple of years right around when I was starting Optimum Joy. And so that greatly influenced just probably a lot of the thought and philosophy behind creating the workplace that I did. And so, yeah, it's crazy to kind of reflect on 10 years ago, but it was out of a super big season of burnout. And I think that's a lot of practice owners. They don't really start from a baseline of super refreshed. They usually start from I just know I need a change and I don't know what the change is going to be. So let me just do it and figure it out as it goes along.
That's awesome. You said that you wanted to bring some elements of CMH, community mental health, that you enjoyed. What did you enjoy about it?
Yeah, so the agency that I was working at, first of all, the clientele was super diverse. My area, I did a few roles within that organization, but the area that I was kind of living and working in, there was 20 different dialects of language spoken. And so we just really worked with a largely diverse group of people. And then the other thing was one family unit could be referred in-house. So if I was seeing the individual adult, somebody else was seeing the couple, someone was working with the kids, someone was doing family. And so any kind of household unit could really have wraparound services where we could kind of easily refer to each other and consult on the cases and really just help a family unit or a unit of people improve the whole system instead of it just being we kind of hope that your system is influenced by this as an individual. And so we do that now in the practice. We're right around 45 providers. And a lot of times there will be where a mom is coming in for session because her kid is being seen somewhere in the office. And that's the only time she would have been able to do it because of childcare and things like that. And so just to kind of think about the fact that people have practical needs, and we are a for-profit business, we are a private practice, but we can also be thoughtful and kind in the do we have diverse offerings on our staff and can we see a range of people across the board? And so now people ask oh, what's your practice's specialty? And this is not very good for marketing, honestly, but it's oh man, you name it, we probably got a provider on staff that sees it, essentially is my kind of tagline with that, which is not super niched, but it's super helpful, I think, to the people who seek services at Optimum Joy.
Yeah. So it's you have niched therapists within the practice, right? And I feel when I worked at CMH when I was 14 or 15, making paper charts in the back, that's how I got introduced to this whole world. And I remember thinking like, what is going on here? We have psychiatrists and caseworkers and group homes and all kinds of stuff. It was really, you're right. That was really unique. And I
Yeah.
cite that often as like, this is pretty cool, like pretty special to watch everybody do their thing. So you're coming out of a season of burnout, and so you name your practice Optimum Joy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, how did you land on joy as like a cornerstone piece of the practice out of a season of burnout?
Well, Joy is actually my middle name. So that's a little piece of it. You know how people are
Oh,
like,
there you go.
never name a practice after you. And my last name is Hoerr, so it's kind of a hard last name for people to like roll with in a lot of ways. It's hair,
Yeah.
but it looks like a variety of pronunciations. And so that we won't speak out loud on a recorded line, but
That's solid, Alex. It's good. Yeah, I guess you can't name it that, right? But
no.
uh,
And like, I think that, but joy is like, besides just having like a personal connection to it, there is some kind of like philosophical thought behind it that it's like, okay, no matter who you are and what circumstances you're in, there's an opportunity for like mindfulness and connection to yourself, which is like a moment of joy ultimately. And so it's hard because I think in our industry, like, are you healed? Like there's, I feel like sometimes there's language that's almost like a moment of arrival, and I think sometimes our name gets a little misinterpreted that we're trying to arrive at some pinnacle, optimum joy, when really it's just like in a given moment of like, whether it's difficulty or disconnection, any type of moment, even it could be like a successful win. Is there a moment of like connection to yourself, a moment of like mindfulness that is like a moment of joy? And so it's more about a deep connection to like self and others than it is about like becoming happy or being fully healed in that regard. Because I just think that that's like, we're always healing, growing, developing, learning, and we never quite reach like a pinnacle in that, is my view as a human being, on those types of things. So it's more about the like, in the moment, can I turn to a moment where I just feel a sense of joy and connection?
I think that's great. Yeah, this is like the ongoing debate in the psych world, right? It's like, is your personality done by age 2 or when you're born, or does it develop, right? And when I was much younger, I used to have a certain opinion, and then I met a psychologist who was like, "Yeah, but you don't think people change from like 40 to 50? Like that's a really tough decade, right?"
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that's a good point that
Yeah.
things develop. Huh? Oh, that's what a cool mission for sure. And you mentioned you have 45 clinicians. So is
Yeah.
that like herding cats? Or you feel like everybody's got their own thing? They're like cogs in a clock, or you feel like
Yeah.
that's also evolving?
We are in a large organizational structure overhaul, and we think a lot about systems and process in our office. I'm really thankful to have, like, we have a support staff of 7, 8, including myself. Like, I majority do more behind the scenes supports than clinical work at this time, which it's
Mm-hmm.
a weird identity thing for me, honestly, because I really like the clinical work piece of it. But I think that because we were really thoughtful about what's a repeatable system and process for like asking for new clients, or putting in a request for time off, or letting the office know that if you're eligible for medical insurance, how you want your employee medical insurance and the plan you select, these are all
Oh,
things that are just like communication. And so because we have a lot of those fixed workflows and systems, it overall works pretty well together. And we do things right now on like teams. And so we just, in the being a larger practice and having a lot of virtual or in-person mixed providers, we just found that smaller units of connection was pretty important, both for like management and flow and workplace, but also just like personal connection to other staff members. So I spend most of my time doing behind the scenes, like leadership development stuff right now, and like reorg stuff.
well, what prompted the reorg shift, and
Yeah.
what are you hoping to like? Where are you hoping to land? So what happened, and then where are you hoping to be?
Yeah. Something that I think was a really positive move that had, how they say intention is different than impact? We did something, we set out a few years ago with intention, and the impact has been different.
Okay.
And so I, for a few years now, have been really trying to cultivate in our office, what is career development look like? Like, how does someone progress from even just like a clinical resident student therapist in our office, maybe up to eventually being like a clinical director or like, can we make that career development process known for how someone would achieve that? And so there's lots of like career advancement opportunity within our office, but it's a lot easier to create roles and it's a lot harder to like help people successfully fulfill the role. And a big part of this is like on me as like a leader, if I'm honest, Jeremy, where I created something but only half baked it, to where I think that our leaders that we have in our systems, they're not necessarily empowered with accountability, decision making. They are wonderful and they're like super competent. It's not because of who they are. It's actually me being like half baked in a system that hasn't like set them up well. So I have a lot of people with big titles, but not a relief on the burden of what it means to be like the kind of end all be all as a practice owner for a lot of different systems. And so the intention was to put people in roles, and some of the roles are just not the right roles for our practice. Some of it is, you know, we have really wonderful people who maybe would be better in a different role, but they're currently fulfilling a certain role. And so how do you do that in a change management way successfully?
Ooh, yikes.
And then some of it is we have roles that we don't have in the office. They're not even created, but we would highly benefit from. And so that's just like a big globulous thing that is taking a lot of, it's taking a lot of like unraveling.
Yeah.
It's taking a lot of unraveling. And it's important to me that our current staff in that big process also feels safe. Like the floor is not going to drop out from under them. So it just takes a lot of time and thoughtfulness and planning on the front end before implementation.
And so much communication, way more than you think, right? Yeah. I don't know who said this. I don't know. Well, I know who said this at a conference I was at recently. I feel like you're going to relate to this, but the person that was in my breakout session said that the business underneath supports the product, which is therapy. This is the wrong language to use for sure. But if the product is treatment or therapy, the business underneath is like all the support stuff that you mentioned. I think that's a hard transition, especially you guys are insurance based, right?
We
Optimum
are, yeah.
Joy is insurance
95%, almost 96% of our clients utilize insurance. Yeah.
Holy smokes.
Mm-hmm.
Which is its own, I mean, that's like our specialty. We know all about that. But you also have to keep the gears running there, right? So it's sort of like we're in Detroit. The assembly line is the business, the product is the car, right?
Yeah.
And so if you were to analogize that, you're trying to reorganize the assembly line, right?
Yeah.
It's really hard to do without breaking the product, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And to do it in a way that isn't too disruptive, where maybe the whole assembly line has to shut down to then reboot.
Totally.
You know, just to kind of stick with your metaphor there, that we've been really fortunate to have staff at Optimum Joy who are like, like clinically excellent, but also like aligned with the values that we have. Like we've been really fortunate that the people who are drawn to work at Optimum Joy are in it for a job and really also like align with a lot of the like values that the company holds. And so really everybody in every position, I think maybe not everybody, I'm sure there's a few stragglers in there that it's a job and that's totally fine. You know, like that should be within someone's right to clock in and clock out and do their job and do it well. But I think something I have going for me is at every level, people really not only want their individual success within the organization, they really want the organization to be successful. And so I just feel very grateful, even though it's like it's a hard process and it's not even done yet. So, but people, just in full transparency as a practice owner, it's like, it's not really all worked out yet, but it's in process. And I have people who believe in it and I believe in it myself. So
that's awesome. I love that. Yeah, I think Jim Collins in Good to Great, which I'm sure have you read that one? Good to Great by Jim Collins?
I haven't. I have been a little bit more on like a fiction.
Okay.
Kick, Jeremy. I am. I don't know if you ever feel this way. Sometimes nonfiction, because it feels like work, and I have so much work going on. that I am
Yeah,
like the only little nugget, like reading fiction is only for me.
I
And
totally
so
get it. Yeah,
all
yeah,
that to
yeah.
say, I have not read Good to Great because I'm on a little bit of a nonfiction break
Totally
right
makes
now.
sense. When you revisit it, do it. I will say though, and I have no benefit in doing this or sharing this, but Duncan Wardle's book, The Imagination Emporium,
Yeah.
it's like a business book written like a cartoon book, which is really
Oh,
fun.
that's
So
super
if you need a
cool.
little bit of
Yeah,
a
I'll
fun
take that
read,
plug.
but Good to Great, you're doing it, right? You have you have stated values and all of that, and that makes a ton of sense. Yeah, reorgs are tough. Having the right people in the right seats on the bus is hard. Getting the right people in the wrong
Yeah.
seat into the right seat is tough.
And
Getting the wrong people in any sense off the bus is hard. It's all hard, right? And
it's
I think
all hard.
yeah, I think once you realize like it's just hard. Like anything worthwhile doing is difficult, and you're just gonna have to do it.
Yeah. Do you know
Yeah.
we hired a consultant initially to help us with the process. And about 6 months, why it's kind of taken so long is I think it took about 4.5, 5 months to realize we're not really making a lot of strides. And then in the 5 or 6 month, it was a lot of kind of like having conversations around like, hey, this doesn't seem like it's really moving forward. And so, a big part of this is also like we chose as a leadership team because, I am like limited in my perspective other than other practice owners I know. And nobody else in our organization has run a practice like I have. They've all chosen to work at one,
Oof.
right? And so we specifically made a choice to bring in an outside perspective to just be helpful. And it actually just ended up being not the right person.
No.
And so, because I do think that there was some like wisdom because of like the context that we were in as an organization, there was some wisdom and still like trying to have a third party, like a consultant help. And so we are going to do that again. We're going to try
Oh.
again with somebody, but it makes for what feels like a long, drawn out process
Yeah.
that keeps some things in limbo. And so basically where we're at with the team is let's try this again with a
Mm,
person. We've been pretty candid on some of the things that didn't work. And if not, I think we have fully
exhausted
instilled the
that.
book. I think we are also all believing that like we can do this if we have to just ourselves. But yeah, so we're kind of working in that process again.
For sure. It's sort of like the process of, which goes against a lot of conventional wisdom, but it's like you all just promote your best people within in house, right? You don't
Hmm.
need to hire outside because they don't
Yeah,
know the
that's what we
decision
do. Yeah.
making. They don't know how you got there. Like,
Yeah.
you know what works, what doesn't work. You know, there's a whole bunch of reasons why you wouldn't do that. And I know Kelly, who's been on the podcast before, but whenever we promote somebody, we always promote our best people internally. Drives her crazy. She's like, that's one of my best people. It's like, yeah, we know. That's why. There's no failing upward here. And it takes a lot of discipline to do that for
Yeah.
sure. Can we
And
talk about how
oh,
you all
please.
decided to go a network be insurance based instead of just cash
Yeah.
based? 45 people cash based, that would simplify your life a lot, I imagine, right?
Yeah,
So,
it really would. We
yeah.
a part of it early on was a decision that hits one on growth and one on values. The growth piece of it was scalability. How can I scale up fast, keep people's caseloads full? And we used to only take one payer. We used to only take Blue Cross plans. Now we take United, Cigna, Aetna, and we have some
Yeah.
like local hospital networks that we are on for like their staff insurance plans, right? Do you know still within probably like I was just looking at these numbers the other day, 65% of our insurance claims are still Blue Cross. Our average kind of when you take all fees for service across the board is like 145 or $46 when you average every single service. And so with insurance, it's like
Um,
it's there is something to be said about a out of pocket cash based system being simpler, but it gets kind of into our values based decision, which is like access.
mm,
So it's actually not one of our formal values, but we do it should be a formal value. We speak about it often enough. And I think that again with some of the people who are drawn to work at Optimum Joy, it's because we share values in is there representation across a variety of diversity on our staff that someone can look and say, hey, I recognize me in that staff member. I would maybe want to like see that person. And then
oh,
can they also afford it? And so, if you go on our website and you look at the faces of people and the demographics of people that are just listed on our website, that has been really intentionally cultivated because there's a study out there that while it doesn't impact outcomes for more like minority individuals or minority people, while like, let's just say I don't know, like black man sees me, a white woman, as a therapist. We might get to the same thing outcomes wise, but whether or not somebody starts therapy is actually greatly impacted by representation.
Oh,
And so
interesting.
it's like pretty crazy. So outcomes maybe don't change, but like whether someone even begins therapy, it really matters that like representation. And that's kind of like, I started like a whole nonprofit that I run outside of like the private practice and stuff. And that piece of it is a big part of like what we're doing is like cultivating representation amongst clinicians, right? But the access to care piece of it is like just trying to provide the opportunity for people to seek out mental health and afford it from a variety of backgrounds.
Yes. Yes.
And so we don't take like Medicare and Medicaid at this point in time. We are selective. We may or may not drop certain insurance payers because of difficulty to work with and low reimbursements. There's some
That's
like
right.
laws changing in Illinois. It doesn't mean that we are just a free for all, but we have really selectively chosen actually to be a place that takes a variety of insurances for that reason.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. So, how do you make that decision? Because what's underlying that decision is a deeply held belief in access and representation and cost, which is your why, despite the fact that it would be easier and more simple for you
Mm-hmm.
to make a different decision. So that's weird, right? And I think Paul Bloom, I think, wrote a book on this recently. He's a psychologist out of Yale. Like, why do people choose the painful route instead of
Sure.
the comfortable route? It's a weird phenomenon, right? Because you would think that if you believe that we're just animals walking around trying to reduce calorie burn, we wouldn't do hard things. I
Right.
don't believe that, but
Yeah.
you've made that decision. So how do you, as a leader, make sure you're making a values-driven decision?
Well, what's funny, access isn't a formal value, but what it is being like a clinician first practice. It's like, oh, can we take care of our employees? And do you know that those two things, access and taking care of clinicians, often butt heads? They often actually don't work together.
Yes,
So we have like
yes.
a value
Talk
to
more
really
about that.
like try to take care of our staff. Yeah, and like AKA we call it like clinician first. I'm sure we could come up with some like catchy phrase for it. But oftentimes trying to like, pay our clinicians the most we can, give them the best benefits possible. Can their life be, basically elevated in a variety of ways? That often bumps up against the access piece of it, where to choose maybe like insurance feels like to not choose our providers because it feels like if they pay less in insurance, then are we really clinician first? And so I think that actually when values-based decisions come up that are hard, I actually think that's probably like a really sweet spot and a good spot to be in because it like pushes us to actually consider. I think just because a decision is hard doesn't make it like a bad decision, actually. And that like attention maybe reveals that you're like really riding the line of like what is like a good thing. So,
Yeah, it's like hard is not bad. Hard is just hard,
yeah,
you know?
sure, sure. It's, here's the thing I think too, like, I forget who said it. It's probably like Brene Brown or something like that. But like to be clear is to be kind. And I just think that like
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
more, I think so. And the more that like I can make decisions on who we are as a practice and clearly communicate those to our staff, it actually really allows them to make a choice where they say, you know what, all things considered, is this the best place for me to be? And so that to me is like a huge responsibility of like my role within the practice and also any of our like leaders and different things like that, or even on like a clinician level, if they can be really clear with what therapy is and is not, what they're able to offer or not, that only like helps make a decision. And it's okay sometimes if it ends up being the like, this served me for a time and now I'm on for something like next. And so really, I think the responsibility is like, okay, let's get clear on our values. Let's make decisions at our values. Let's be really clear about the decisions that we're making and just allow and set up other people to also be making choices.
No, I love that. That's fantastic. We'll get right back to the podcast episode, but first let me ask you a question. Who is the highest paid insurance biller in your practice? If you're the one doing your billing, the answer is you. If you're the practice owner and you're a clinician, you know the drill. You do the hard work, you deliver great services. And then there's this waiting game. There's billing after hours and on weekends and during birthday parties, or you go to the office for a quote unquote quick visit. And then you look up at your clock and all of a sudden you've been there for 3 or 4 hours doing billing. Following up on claims is tedious and it creates a massive bottleneck for your cash flow. And that's exactly why Practice Solutions does billing for practices that take insurance. We take your practice's billing completely off your plate. Our team handles everything from eligibility and benefits to charging cards to posting payments, following up on denials. And we deal with insurance companies every single day so that you can focus on growing the practice. It's time to stop stressing over the billing and getting back to what you do best, which is running your business as best as you can. Head over to practicesol.com today to schedule your free consultation to see if our done for you billing services are right for you. All right, let's get back to today's episode. Where do you feel like, because like 45 people, that's a lot to get your arms around. You're like getting to like medium to large practice size there, where you may not be able to even meet some of the clinicians that work in the practice. Where do you feel the most misunderstood in your role as the leader who like supports and grows this thing?
Thankfully, because we have different people in different roles, it doesn't always feel like Alex told me no or Alex, did all these things. Like that, that definitely does sometimes happen. But again, I think that because we have systems in place, it allows a bit of space and separation from in a way, which has been really nice. But what's interesting at the size we are, Jeremy, my wheelhouse as a leader is very much relational, and being able to like have a lot of relational capital, to be able to leverage relational capital, to be able to make an ask of someone through relational capital, like that is my sweet spot. And at the size we are, I am not the primary like holder of relationships at the office anymore. If anything, I actually like have relationships with a few people and they are the ones who really work through some of the stuff, right? And so it's giving me the feeling of like I am like a bobblehead leader, where it's like a figurehead that people like look to in some capacity. And I am really like, it's like, that's what it feels like, that it's like, okay, you're like a face of an organization in some ways, but there is like a piece of that is like, I don't actually know how to be that type of leader. And I'm learning and figuring out what does it mean to like lead, when it means leading from a bit of distance from like every single person within the organization. And so it's still like a little bit of a work in progress for me on what that exactly looks like, to be mostly strategic and not necessarily implementer or solutions, boots on the grounds with people.
Yeah, because you're looking at sort of the prow of the ship, looking forward, like where are we headed in the next 12 to 18 months, right? And that can be quite challenging. So where's the practice headed in the next 12 to 18 months? What are you most excited about as you look at the practice's growth and the lands? Because like your state, Illinois is going through some really big insurance changes for sure. They're about to set the floor for fee for service for a lot of insurance. So like if anybody listening to this is in Chicago or Illinois, you have some really big changes coming that we're all sort of watching with bated breath.
Yeah.
So with that said, looking at those dynamics, what's got you excited?
And what's interesting is those insurance reimbursement rate floors will help some, but it won't help all. Like there's some interesting like piecemeal of it. But I think that we have recently decided as a practice that we kind of like the size we are. Maybe we'll grow a little bit based on clinical offerings and things like that. But I think that we are, for the next few years, more so looking at like, what does it look like to have depth in a way, more than just like expansive reach. And so I think that we will probably like almost cap out as an office around like 60 providers. So somewhere in this like 45 to 60 range is where we'll swim in for the next few years.
That's gigantic.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? It's kind of crazy. And we've always kind of had a bit of an identity where we like really love embracing like new or young clinicians and doing a lot of training and development in-house. And so even just like I have always had it as like a kind of not, it's not like a mission statement. It's always been in my mind that if we could create like a really wonderful workplace where people would want to stay, that's like a goal of mine. And we have a lot of people who've been with us for like 6 to 8 years as a practice where they stay
Holy
beyond
smokes,
like,
that's a huge accomplishment.
yeah, where they stay beyond their like full license and different things like that, which is really, I'm super proud of. That won't be everybody, but like employee retention is like the biggest cost to a business, right? And so if you can retain somebody, you might as well. But I think also too that it's like if we are like a training place, what does it look like to embrace people, be with them for, a good like 3 to 5 years and maybe like also have them like go on to do their own things and stuff. And so, we've kind of started talking about ourselves as like a training hospital in a way, where we have like our residency program, our young clinicians program, and some of those things in house. And I think just really like leaning into some of that instead of just growing larger, 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 and losing some of our identity, can we maintain who we are and just continue to do that in like a really wonderful way that also isn't close-handed with people, that we would embrace people as coworkers and then also maybe, launch them on their career to other things as well. So I think that's what's next for us is
Oh,
just to
that's
kind of
awesome.
deepen the development work for people. And maybe that is where someone stays at Optimum Joy. And maybe that's sometime where it's like, like we're really proud of the time that we overlapped. And also you're now too doing like this really cool thing that we feel super proud of. So we're not trying to grow into
I
like
mean,
endless
the
oblivion.
practice owner, well, for sure. No, that totally makes sense. The practice owners that I really admire, the ones that can grow these medium to large group practices, they have this really unique overlap. You're one of them, where training, education, mentorship is a really key focus of everything they do, right? I'm thinking like you, Michelle Perry, Danielle Hayes, Nicole Brewer, like all these folks that grow very excellent practices. It seems like they all revolve around training and mentorship. What is that about? Why is that the engine that drives like clinician count and outcomes, that kind of thing?
Yeah. Well, I think that there's one piece of it that is like career development beyond just seeing clients. So for the people who are doing the mentorship, for the people that are doing supervision, for the ones that step into leadership roles, there is some of it that like people, I think we have a hard industry where it's like, oh, do I want to see between 20 and 30 clients from now until my retirement? I don't think a lot of people want to do that. And so I
Mm,
think a piece of it is retaining qualified staff who are able to add some variety into the work that they do. And that's like really helpful. But then also, too, learning is a huge mitigator of burnout. So, we have like weekly CE, like lunch and learn style CEs in our office where we just have a variety of like speakers who, they get paid like an honorarium to basically give a 1 hour CE to our staff. And it's like if you attend
wow.
live, you get like a free CE as a staff member. We're building like an online learning library for them. And it's like this kind of big thing, but like exposure to new information, new science, a new technique, a slightly new way of seeing something, that's a huge mitigator of burnout. And the burnout rates are terrible for therapists right now. Like early career, which is 10 years or less therapists who quit, is like, it's about 50%, if I'm remembering the statistic right.
Holy
And so it's really bad. And so
smokes.
we lean into it, because I think people want more for themselves than to just see 20 or 30 clients once a week. And it's like a next step for them. But then also the education and continued learning is a mitigating factor against burnout. And we hope that people can stay in this career. We already are at a mental health shortage in the United States for providers. And like, if people join the industry and then quit, it's not really helping our industry besides supply and demand. It's not really helping our industry as a whole. Like if we can help people stay, I think that that's a really valuable endeavor.
Well, yeah, and it seems like they're staying with you. I mean, 6 to 8 years is unheard of, I feel like, in
Yeah.
almost any industry, right?
Yeah. Some people too, it's
Yeah.
actually probably a year longer because they come for their student residency with us and then they stay those first few years where they're getting their license and then they stay after with their full license. And so we don't really count that residency. They're not employees at that point in time. So we don't count it as an employment year, but it is
Hmm.
even a year beyond that for a lot of people. Which is a great
Wow,
pipeline too
amazing.
for hiring, honestly, that you like know somebody because they worked with you for a year.
I mean, that is incredible. I feel like everybody that I talk to, that every clinician, every group practice owner I talk to that has a similar philosophy and worldview grid that you just described, it's the same narrative over and over again. So that's very, very cool. Well, I'd be remiss to ask you about, as you look at like an AI world,
Yeah.
and I'll tell you that Tony Robbins' AI therapy company was not on my bingo card. So just curious about your thoughts on where this whole thing is going. Do you think that's going to become a feature of our economy and therapy?
I mean, AI is the number, like wellness and growth, which I think a lot of people using AI as a therapist. The last kind of I looked, it was the number one reason why people are using AI. And so
Wow.
we do, whether, I think that like if practices are seeing lower intake rates, if practices, we had a therapist the other day that he basically, in the course of care, advised a client, not advised, but like it came up in conversation that it was like, this is probably something that the client is going to do, take action in their life or something. I didn't know. I wasn't in on the session. Well, the client comes back and basically is like, hey, I actually ran what you said by AI and they affirmed what you said. So I am going to do it. And so there's just like an interesting, like, and this therapist was super offended by it. They were like, are you kidding me? Like,
Totally. I totally get that.
I think that we as providers, most providers I know are super resistant. I think we're going to have to figure out I think to embrace it a little bit, even as like a
Mm.
tool, whether that's like in between sessions or like to leverage sessions is probably, I would imagine what we as providers are going to need to do to kind of keep up with if the trend. Do I love it? No. Do I think that's going to happen? Yeah. And so there is just a piece of that where it's like, if we can figure out how to use it as a tool to like sharpen conceptualization or to increase outcomes and those types of things, then I think that there still is a people component to it that is not easily replaceable. We've used a lot of AI, honestly, to automate our systems. I have now written all kinds of like
Cool.
script code within AI for a lot of our Google Sheets that we use in our Google Workspace. And it has like minimized probably 10 hours of work in like one department in a week to what is a 15 or 20-minute run. And we're not getting rid of that person's job and their 10 hours a week. We're just refocusing their time. And so that type of thing is, if we're not doing that, we become essentially obsolete. We can't keep up with whatever is happening in this thing. So yeah.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, so we're a process company, right?
Yep.
For us, it's been like candy every day, right? I mean, we can
Mm-hmm.
do all kinds of stuff with these
Yeah.
tools. And it seems like you're an inventor type of person, right? It's like dangerous for someone like you to have access to these tools, right? Because you're like, oh, I could build anything, right? Which is pretty exciting when you think
It
about it.
is. Do you know, Jeremy, a side project I have going on, which everybody's doing this, everybody's starting an EHR, but there's not a lot of
Oh,
EHRs.
yeah.
There's not a lot of EHRs out there that are great for, 30 to 60 clinicians. And so in the past 6 months, me and my friend who's a software developer are building like a really robust EHR system that we as an office will just use. It doesn't even matter if other people use it to me or not. We pay around between $5,000 and $6,000 a month to Simple Practice because of the size that we are. And there's a lot of things I love about Simple Practice. However, there's some things that we have to figure out workarounds for because they don't exist in the software. They weren't built into the software that we need. And so it's just gotten frustrating enough that I've been on demo calls with other EHRs and things like that. And I'm still like, oh yeah, this has this, but it doesn't have this, or this has this, but it doesn't have this, and doing all this thing. And I was like, you know what? You're right. It's bad for an inventor like me because I'm like T minus a few months from having like exactly what I want with great HIPAA
Yeah.
compliance, all this stuff as an entire software. So it's terrible.
Yeah, it's kind of awesome. And then you realize, so I also am one who's a tinkerer. And I'm like, man, the software thing is really hard to do, right? It makes you
It's very
realize the
hard.
genius of like the people who have done software really well, like software we all use, like that was really, really hard to do, like
Yeah.
almost impossible.
I could
But
not do it
now that
without
we
my
can
friend
all
who's a
do it,
software developer. Yeah, now that we can, kind of.
yeah, we have one on contract. He's incredible. It's like, hey man, I'm gonna break the world if I have access to stuff. Like you're now the regulator on Jeremy
Yeah,
ideas, and it's saved our bacon a lot. Because
I
I'm
believe
right
it.
there with you. Like, oh, which software do we use that we could just get rid of? Right? You can't do that very quickly, but
No,
it's not a bad idea. Seems like people are doing
no.
it. So
Yeah.
good for you. That's awesome. No, that's really good feedback, and I appreciate you doing that. And AI can't replace empathy, right? It can be really agreeable, but I don't think it
It
can
can.
replace empathy. I think it'd be really hard
No.
to do that
You
for
know,
sure.
and obviously with COVID and the turn to telehealth, I don't know how this works even like within telehealth, but there are some really interesting physics science out there that it's like when you and I are in the same room, like if we're in the same room right now, it's like our brains and our neurochemistry actually read each other in a really unique way that, like for a therapist to take a deep breath in a room with a client, like actually signals to their nervous system, oh, I can take a deep breath. And so we've already kind of,
Whoa.
yeah, it's super cool. And so it's really where like somebody who is regulated, you can become more dysregulated by the person you're with in the room, but you can also in and of yourself can be like a regulating tool if you're in the room. And now I think you can do this via telehealth too, but you have to do it with verbal cues. Hey, I think we need to, like you can still do that,
Ooh,
but
yeah.
it's just a little bit different. Whereas like when people are in person together, their nervous systems and their brains literally link up and read each other in a way that is impactful. And I don't think we talk about that in the world of therapy enough, that it's like just coming to your appointments and being in the room with a more regulated person is in and of itself therapeutic and useful to your growth and development. And so telehealth kind of complicates that already, but then you have an even wider distance that it's like, oh, there's actually not a human present at all in this process. I do think that will do something to how we are able to like be agents of change and impact in that type of way. That's like, that doesn't, you're saying empathy doesn't exist, but also like just being a neurochemical being in connection with another neurochemical being won't exist in that capacity. So
Yeah.
yeah, that sounds very
That's
like
a
woo woo. It's a
problem.
very
When
science.
I sat down and talked with Marina for sure. No, this is super helpful. And sat down with Marina Badillo Diaz, who's her
Mhm.
website is called the AI Social Worker. She's a very interesting person, but she was doing some work. I forget what state it was in, but they're finding that kiddos, like youth, maybe ages 8 to 13, are having bonds with their AI, whatever
Yeah,
companion thing. And when it's stripped away, they're having really severe reactions to that. That's a problem for sure.
it's a problem. I
Like
know.
I'm not for that for
Yeah,
sure. I'm for better productivity, but
yeah,
AI is not a person, it's a tool, it's a computer.
I know.
So it's really, really important that we have that conversation more and
I
more.
think so. I think we'll have to really be watchful on the young people who were still in college, high school, middle school, elementary school during COVID, that now we have the introduction of AI. So there already was some developmental interruption on like social emotional skills that happened from COVID era. And now we are introducing to that same group of people what is AI as a companion. And I just think that there's something about that combination that we're going to see it continue to play out as is like what you're saying with this example of like these young people who have like a connection to AI that is not a person and feel the loss of it. I just think that the COVID AI back to back, it's not very far in history that those two things happened. And I think it will have pretty longitudinal effects for that segment of
Yeah.
people specifically. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I'll be the old guy that's like, these young people,
Yeah,
just because
absolutely.
that turns out.
I'm like, I'm 35 and I'm already that old guy who's like, there's young people. So, yeah.
Oh, that's exciting. Well, thank you so much for doing this. Where do people follow along? Do you all post about what you're doing, or maybe your nonprofit does more of that kind of thing? But how do people follow
Yeah.
along with what you're up to?
Yeah. OptimumJoy.com is a big place for people to just find out about Optimum Joy. Optimum Joy on Instagram is probably our second most, like more smaller updates on like new staff or things that we're seeing and learning. I do think that like we didn't talk about it a lot here, but the nonprofit is a huge part of my life right now, and that's Resonate Joy. And so I think that that's like there's some like cool things that we're doing over there that if people are interested, that's like a great thing to check out, or resonatejoy.org. But yeah, I would say that those are the two main places that if you're interested in following along, that would be some great information for you to have.
Amazing. Well, we'll include the links below
Great.
if anyone's interested. But Alex,
Yeah.
thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate it, Jeremy. Thanks so much.
If you enjoyed today's episode of The Claim Game, please take a moment to leave us a rating and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. It really helps new listeners to find us. Make sure you never miss an episode by subscribing to The Claim Game on your favorite podcast app. Your feedback means so much to us. We want to provide valuable education about revenue cycle management. So if there's something we didn't cover in our topic that was a burning question for you, please let us know so we can try to get you the information you desire. You can find the links to all resources we mentioned in this episode in the show notes. And if you want to dive deeper into our resources, we have 2 places you can do that. First, you can go to our blog at practicesol.com/blog, where we have 8 years of educational blogs. If you want to learn more about what Practice Solutions does, reach out. We'd love to hear from you. Just go to practicesol.com to learn more and to connect with one of our awesome people on our team. Thanks for listening. We are Jeremy and Catherine Zug, and this is The Claim Game. See you at the game table next time.